Tonight on Free Minds TV, we have a story for you about Phonehenge. We'll get into exactly what that is. We'll also be talking about floating cities, a concrete alligator that was shot by police, and a boy and his inhaler. More coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
Welcome to episode 209 of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
No, and Nick, it's interesting. Some people, it recently came to my attention that some people might think that episode 209 might think season 2, episode 9. No, that's actually 209 episodes, 209 weeks that we have done new shows. That's more than a season or two. That's many seasons, many.
We don't really have a season. We just kind of go all year, and we might miss like a week or two.
Hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Free Minds. Well, not hundreds and hundreds plus some. Plus some bonus stuff. Plus the radio show, plus tons of bonus videos and extra shows that are up on our website. You can check it all up at freemindstv.com. All right, without further ado, we do have a lot to get into. We're going to be talking about obeying, I think is the theme. It has to do with an inhaler and stuff, as well as an out-of-control gator of some sorts that had to be taken out by law enforcement.
Dangerous animal.
Very dangerous animal. We'll be getting into that story, but first I want to talk about something called Phonehenge. Never in a million years did I knew something like this existed, Nick, until came time for Los Angeles County officials to try to rip the whole thing down. Apparently it's been up for a couple of decades. This monstrosity of a house called Phonehenge. Los Angeles County officials are demanding that the creative homeowner tear down a 20,000 square foot domicile he calls Phonehenge West, or face up to 7 years behind bars. Former telephone technician Alan Kimball Fahey began building the structure 3 decades ago in Acton, the Los Angeles Times reports. Fahey, who christened the project Phonehenge because it sits atop pilings modified from the phone utility poles, says he intends to turn the compound into a museum one day. The labyrinth network of buildings where Fahey, his wife, and his teenage son live includes a 70-foot tower covered in Italian stained glass windows and a barn. Fahey uses a motorized cart to get between buildings, the report says. The paper describes the compound as a hodgepodge of reddish buildings braced with scores of utility poles and steel beams connected by bridges and ramps. Inside, the castle is filled with more than 20,000 books and a yurt, although Fahey and his wife sleep on a bed. Well, I guess that was important to put in this report here. Even though the city is trying to throw him in jail if he doesn't tear this thing down, he does have a lot of support. Apparently, national group Face Off, which opposes what they call abusive building codes. They stand for Fight Against Code Enforcement Office, is backing him. Oh yeah, it's quite the thing. He's got windmills, he's got everything. It's also his compound here, or his Phonehenge, has become quite the tourist attraction, with people coming from all over to gawk at the spectacle. It is quite the creation, but officials are not happy with it. The jury began hearing the county's case against Fahey earlier last week. He is charged with 14 criminal misdemeanor counts, including unlawful use of land. LA County Deputy District Attorney David Campbell told the paper, and that they also say that he has repeatedly ignored city officials' warnings that he is violating multiple municipal building safety and fire codes. And, worst of all, he thinks he's above the law. Quote, he has set up his own arrogant interpretation of the law, Campbell told the paper. Well, you know what? Aren't laws meant to be interpreted? Isn't every interpretation arrogant interpretation of the law? Just throwing that out there. Anyways, it looks like Fahey is also arguing that he shouldn't have to tear down his building because it's been up for 2 decades. Why are they bothering him now about it, he says. And you know what? I don't care when. It's his land, right? If you own your own land, you should be able to build whatever you damn well please. When you try to sell it to someone else, you should be telling them what they're buying into. Are they buying something that's going to fall on them and smush them? Yeah, you should probably let them know. It would be negligent not to. But if it's your land, you own it, Why should the government decide how you build it?
You really can't build anything cool anymore is another one of the effects of this. Not only do you not really have full property rights when you have these building codes in place, but you can't build something like Phonehenge or a castle or, they just don't like innovation. I've heard that you can actually build a pretty decent housing. You have to put a bit more work into it than just dumping the things there, but I guess you can use cargo containers as to frame an exterior of a living space. There's a lot of ways to build dwellings, and some of them are actually probably better than this old stick construction, nailing sticks together to hold a roof up over your head. It surprises me that we still do that in 2011, that that's still the way things are built, which I don't have a problem with it if that's what you want to build on your property. But how about we let people actually decide how they want to build the homes they want to live in?
Doesn't it seem crazy to say that on your own property, if you want to build a house and live in it, you're going to face 7 years behind bars? On your own, what happened to the domicile is your castle? You're your own person. This is the American dream we're talking about, Nick. You build your own house and that's your castle. Yet the city officials say, oh no, you didn't build it the way I would have built it. Right. You didn't build it the way this group of men and women, so-called elected officials who decide what buildings should look like. You didn't follow what they think it should look like. So we're going to put you in jail if you don't rip it down.
And the thing is, you didn't build it that way now, but if you're living in a home that was built 200 years ago, it's obviously not compliant with things like fire code. But it's okay if you live in them. I haven't heard any officials that are so rabid that say, well, we're just going to make everybody tear down any structure that's more than 30 years old because it doesn't comply with the fire code.
Well, I don't know. This guy
most of the older
years ago.
Here in New England, there's a lot of homes that are well over a century old, and they certainly aren't up to any of these newer codes.
And I don't care if you want to build something that's guaranteed to fall down
tar paper shack
and smush you. I don't care. It's your house.
Lean to.
It's supposedly supposed to be a free country. You should be able to build whatever the hell you please, Nick.
Used to be that way.
And buyer, you should have to put up a little sign or be criminally liable of visitors coming in. If you're inviting a visitor in, be like, look, this thing's going to fall one day. It might be today.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd be liable if they got hurt. But it's your property. Why do they care? Speaking of all these tornadoes that have come through, a lot of the reports have been officials ordering people out. You have 6 hours to gather up your personal belongings, and then you're out of your home. Why? If you want to stay in your ripped-up home, why shouldn't you be allowed to? Why is it that the police have to come and kick you out? Who cares if the wind tore half of your house away? It's still the other half that's still there is still yours, right? What right is it of the police to come and kick you out? What's up with this, Nick?
Yeah. If you want to go camping in your living room,
why not?
You should be able
to
do that.
It's your living room.
Yeah. You should be able to do
that. But it's
that.
not, Nick, because you know what? We don't actually own the houses we think we own. We rent them from the government. Try not paying your rent for a couple of years. See how long it takes before the police come and kick you out of your home.
Property taxes are effectively rents on land.
Of course they are.
And then there's rules.
And so are building codes.
Then there's rules. There's a building code.
Thou shalt mow your grass.
Zoning.
If you don't mow your grass enough, you're going to be kicked out. And it's not the same everywhere. In New Hampshire here, it's more lax, especially in some of the more rural parts of the state. There's some bigger places. In parts of Texas, there's no building codes.
I believe it was the city of Houston, but it was either Houston or Austin, but you can't quote me.
Large
which
cities.
It was.
Anyways,
there are
so it's not everywhere.
That don't have zoning. Yeah.
But there are some busybodies out there, Nick, who really think it's their business what other people build on their own land. And I ask those people to look down inside that deep, dark pit of a soul that they have. I want you to look in there and see what's wrong, that you think it's your business what everybody else should do. What's rotting in there? What kind of a dark pit do you have that you think you should be involved in other people's business and what they do on their land?
It's usually because they aren't very competent themselves. I found that people who usually get into bureaucracies that regulate an activity or a trade, it's usually because they just weren't actually that good at, say, building houses or.
I was like, I could never build my own house, so we should only have licensed people build it because I'm an idiot. I could never cut hair, so we should have to license all the hair cutters.
Most people would like to be able to sell their house and say that it meets fire codes. I mean, I don't think that you need these codes in place as a mandatory thing, but there are codes out there. There are national standards put out there by safety institutes,
also,
and you can build them to those specs, and then you can say this house was built in compliance with such
and you're not going to get a loan from a bank, Nick,
to build
a shack that's going to fall over. It's just not going to happen. The contractor's not going to be just builded whatever they want. They're going to build something that they can sell, something that they can get a loan from a bank.
So basically, you'd be able to build a shack.
This is an area.
A person with money would be able to choose to live in an unsafe shack if they didn't have to finance the purchase of the building materials for the shack.
Yeah. Anyways, this Phonehenge guy, I hope he wins. I'm sure that he probably. I'm not confident. You know, juries are pretty stupid these days. He's got a jury trial, but you know what juries do. They get some of the dummiest of the dum-dums on those
It'd be a shame if they rip this thing down.
It absolutely would be. And it would also be a shame if they put him in jail for 7 years. That would be a bigger shame. Both are a shame. Anyways, this is America, the new America. They didn't have a problem with it 20 years ago, but in today's America, apparently they do. You know what we should do, Nick? We should move to the Free State. Or build a city in the middle of the ocean. If Phonehenge was built in the middle of the ocean, would he have had this problem?
Probably not.
Or he would have been eaten by sharks.
There's no building codes in the North Atlantic or the Pacific, as far as I know. And Milton Friedman's grandson, Patrick Friedman, is actually suggesting that one solution, if you want to live in a more free society, is to build floating cities at sea. Sounds a little bit far-fetched, but they've managed to, the Seasteading Institute, which is his organization pursuing this goal, has managed to raise $2 million, which is not a whole lot, but $2 million to study the idea, to come up with some designs and test their feasibility. But the idea, at least as it stands right now, is to build a city floating 12 miles off the coast of California. Off the coast of San Francisco is the one proposed location. But
is that out of the jurisdiction of the U.S.?
See, that's my question, is because the territorial waters thing got extended at one point. I thought it was 30 miles now.
I thought the whole idea was so that you didn't have to live under the bureaucratic regulations of a regular government. It's a neat idea, but you know, this would be billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars and many decades to create.
Right.
I definitely, if someone wants to do it, great. Right. But is this going to get us liberty in our lifetime? No. And
no.
Would this, even if it happened, would in the article it talks about having a Google city or a Mac city, an Apple city. Would that really get us freedom? Well, that would just be living under corporate structure of government. Yeah, it would be voluntary that you bought into it, but what would be the other option? Right. It's kind of like we have under this government. Well, if you don't like it, you should just leave. Go to no more free government. Well, where's there more free? That's why I think this is a perfect opportunity, Nick, to plug the Free State Project. New Hampshire, that's a fairly free state. What if we got all the liberty lovers to come to one state, fight for freedom here? Seems like it's not a bad idea. We already have the land here. We don't have to build it in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with Patrick Friedman's theories about, you know, basically saying that innovation in society and serving marginalized groups has always happened on the frontier, and he's saying we need a frontier. Well, to a point, I agree with you, but until space exploration kicks off, or until they can get this prototype city built in 2040, I'll be 52 by then. You know, I'm not going to hold my breath for either of those things to bring us liberty in my lifetime. So I think the Free State Project is probably a better short to medium.
It is very cool that people are talking about this because they've recognized that there's no free countries out there. There's nowhere. That's the problem with, if you don't like it, just leave. That's the mentality of the government folk is, well, if you think our government's too big, go somewhere else. Go to more free government. Well, guess what? All the land is occupied by government.
Well, largely, I will say, I mean, there is a certain degree of freedom if you're sailing from port to port, not when you're in port, but if you can get out on the ocean. You do have a certain degree of freedom. Of course, you have to spend it on a boat.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of jobs
How much can you do on a sailboat? I mean,
true.
It's old for me.
But people are recognizing that we need somewhere where these oppressive governments aren't growing like big old fat ticks on the back of your poor dog, ready to explode and suck the poor beast dry. It's good that people are talking about it, and I think the Free State Project is an excellent example. They don't sponsor us, and we're not members. We were both born and raised here in New Hampshire, but it's not a bad idea. Get liberty lovers to move to one place. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be at the annual Porcupine Freedom Festival. You can go to porcfest.com for more info. We'll be up there creating a special about it. So if you haven't heard much about the Free State Project, stay tuned to the next couple of episodes. We'll have a whole episode dedicated to that. All right, without further ado, let's move on to obeying, Nick. what happens if you don't obey? You know, if we have time for it.
Officials don't like it when you disobey.
No, they absolutely don't. It doesn't matter where they are, whether they're an official in a school or whether they're an official in the government. If they're in charge, they want people to obey. You're supposed to listen to what I have to say.
They don't even like it when you question very much.
No, questions shall not be
It's the first step towards disobedience.
If we have time, we'll get into a story about what will happen if you don't obey when the officials tell you not to feed other people, feed the homeless. But first, it's important to get where this starts. This all starts at a young, ripe age when you're in school. You have to learn to follow the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, well, you'll be punished. When 5th grader Isaiah Butt's inhaler fell out of his pocket at school, he received an in-school suspension, a penalty his mother says suffocates common sense and could put other children at risk. I wonder if she came up with the suffocates. Interesting, or if that was the creative spin that this news journalist, Miss Skylar Sweischer, came up with. Anyways,
is it a print journalism source? Because then probably, yeah.
Yeah, the Columbia Daily Herald claims that this. Anyways, the boy's mother, Miss Whitmore, admits that she didn't follow the proper procedures for registering her son's inhaler with the Murray County school system, but she thinks the district's approach is heavy-handed and unfairly punishes her child for something she failed to do. Whitmore said she worries students with asthma might be scared to bring their inhalers to school if they face suspension for a first-time offense. This needs to be changed before some student loses their life over student code of conduct, she said. Nothing on the suspension form indicates the inhaler was being abused or improperly used. Whitmore said her son received a 4-day suspension for possessing the inhaler, and the assistant principal kept the inhaler in a drawer overnight where he couldn't even use it at home. The school has put down that he had drug paraphernalia on his person. All she gets, all she had to do is fill out a form. There's always going to be somebody who's unhappy filling out our forms, said Hickman, one of the school board members. And then there's a bunch more quotes, a couple pages of them, of school board members just saying, all she had to do is follow the rules. All she had to do is follow the rules. We have rules. You got to follow the rules. Well, it's true. There are rules in this society, and if you don't learn them at a young age when you're in school, well, then you'll run afoul of the law when you get older. Schools are essentially indoctrinating you how to fit into the more complex society, which comes after school. Schools are a smaller portion of society. Not trying to say that it's right. I'm just saying what it is. Schools teach kids if you don't follow the rules, you're going to be screwed. You're going to be in trouble. Even if it's your parents who mess up.
Well, and
that's true when you get out of school and you live in society as well.
That was the idea of public education as it was promoted by a lot of so-called progressives at the early part of the last century. Was, yeah, they said that openly, that school would be used to make a citizenry that just followed the rules, make obedient workers. That's one of the reasons why the bells still ring. Most of us don't work in factories anymore, but it's still to condition you to that Pavlovian response of bell rang, must get up, must go.
Yeah,
don't think, just follow the signals.
I'm all about education, Nick. I work in education. I go to school for it. I think education is extremely important. But I also think it's important to be honest about what schools are about and really question, is this really what we're wanting to be doing? Are we creating innovators? Are we creating people who are going to be thinking outside the box? Or should we look at schools and say, well, is this really what we want to be doing in society? I say no. I say it's time for a change. I say that these indoctrination centers, and that's what they are, and I hear people in pro-education say these libertarians are going to destroy education because they're just calling them government schools and indoctrination centers. Well, that's what they are. Let's not lie about it. That's what they're designed to do, and that's what they're doing. So when we hear people in education say, it's bad to call them government schools because that's putting it down. Well, no, that's being honest. When we call them conditioning centers, that's what they're doing. They're conditioning people how to fit in the current society, which is important if you want to stay out of jail. A lot of people don't understand. See, there's a difference between understanding your rights and then violating them in order to make a statement, such as civil disobedience, or not knowing that you're supposed to obey or you'll end up in jail. There's a reason that over 2 million people are behind bars in this country. It's because the schools failed to teach them how to follow the rules.
Well, they have. There's also the when you try
people
to force
fight back.
Right, when you try to force people.
But a lot of them,
the more rigidly you try to regiment what people may and may not do, which is happening now,
more people go to jail.
More people go to
but
prison.
there's also
which
a
is
direct
why we have
correlation.
the largest prison population in the world.
But Nick, there is also a direct correlation with level of education and whether you go to prison or not. So it kind of
yeah, but you might just be smarter at getting away with your crimes. There are plenty of people out there that have a whole career of
but
crime
they follow the rules. Oh, it doesn't matter if you don't follow the rules behind the curtain. But out in the open, Nick, you better follow the rules.
Right.
That's what it's all about. So I think it's important to open up that dialogue and say, this is what schools are designed to do. This is what they're currently doing. Is that really what we want to be doing, though? I don't think so. I think it's a bad thing if everybody just does the same thing as the person behind them and follows the rules without question. I think you're setting yourself up for a very dangerous society, which is what we're sliding into. We're sliding into a society where the majority of the public thinks the country is doing just fine. The police state's happening. Who cares? Government's ruined the economy. Who cares? Facing huge icebergs in the middle of this country's path with unfunded mandates where our foreign policy is spreading us around the globe. Who cares? Well, that's because we're not questioning it. We're going down the same educational path that we have been for 100 years now without changing it. It's time for a change. That's what I think anyways.
Oh, I would agree with you.
Because
it's nice to have that dialogue open. But
why are they really doing this to this kid? Does it really? 4-day suspension for having
really
his
matter.
inhaler?
It didn't disrupt anything.
No,
I
of
mean,
course
the suspension was more disruptive.
It's to teach him to follow the rules. I say that's a bad idea. Sometimes, yeah, of course you have to follow certain rules. That's moral, though. No, not
sometimes you also have to break rules.
Of course you do.
If the rules are stupid, then
what if Martin
or
Luther
immoral,
King
maybe
had
you have
followed the
right.
rules?
Sometimes you have
what
a
if
duty
Rosa
to
Parks had
disobey.
followed the rules? What if Gandhi had followed the rules? You know, all these people that we look up to in society that we revere.
Well, what if the founding fathers had followed the rules? Then there would be no United States.
Our heroes are heroes because they didn't follow the rules. Yet today, what you're supposed to do is be like the people who follow the rules. No. No, no, no. Look at who your heroes are. Look at who you read about and who you preach to. Look at the posters on the wall. Not the modern ones. I know a lot of schools have the modern presidents. How about the past ones? The ones of the last 150 years. All those, the past leaders. The ones we revere as heroes did not follow the rules. And I think that's important to state, something important to think about. All right, we do need to move along. Let's talk about killing dangerous crocs.
Well, it's actually the alligators.
Gators.
Yeah, very similar. This story's coming out.
Or is it just a hunk of cement?
Independence, Missouri. A report of you gave it away. A report
you did in the intro.
Oh, I guess that's true. A report of a wandering alligator in the woods that is what led Independence police officers to shoot a concrete alligator lawn ornament over the weekend. According to a statement released by police, Rick Sheridan was working in his garage when he heard gunshots and said he found officers lined up on the bank shooting at the large reptile. The officers fired 2 rounds and killed my concrete ornamental alligator, Sheridan said. So apparently it took him 2 rounds to confirm there was an alligator.
Oh, that's how he got tough scales.
They fired. Maybe they missed on the first one.
Oh, okay.
There's no guarantee that they hit it on the first one. In a statement, Independence Police said a caller reported that his children had seen the alligator along a creek and his son had shown him the creature. Police dispatch contacted the Missouri Conservation Department, who said if the officer did locate the alligator, to please put it down. The officer located the alligator, or what he thought was an alligator, in the wooded area, and fired at it twice. Now, Sheridan, I supposedly told the police that he had put it there to keep kids from trespassing on his property, and I think it may have actually been one of the trespassing kids who reported, because this was on his property, may have reported the alligator. He said that wasn't why he put it there, but he did say that he had put up no trespassing signs in the past that had been taken down and vandalized, so maybe it really was, but regardless, I just think it's a funny story. It's not exactly.
Because he's got to get a
This
real
isn't one of our
gator.
more serious stories. I just find it humorous.
But I do want to point out that if
you should think before you shoot the alligator.
That is true, because if a regular citizen had done this and gone and shot this concrete alligator, and the police had been called, they probably would have been arrested for.
Maybe it is Missouri.
I don't know what it's like. I know that in a lot of places they would have been arrested for discharging a firearm. Anyways. We do have time for it, so I want to get into it. What happens when adults don't obey? Because we know what happens when kids don't obey in school. They're suspended. They're given detentions, all that fun stuff. What happens when adults don't obey, though? Well, we all know that. They go to jail, because it's not just sitting in a detention room, which is very much like a jail in some cases, or sitting at home, which is, I don't know, sometimes is. But they go to a place with bars and scary people inside. Bad people, some of them. Some have raped and killed people. And some are there just because they decide to feed some hungry people. It's a big difference, though. Isn't it funny how we cage the same people who feed hungry people as the people who rape and kill people? Seems weird to me. Anyways, 3 arrested accused of illegally feeding the homeless. Orlando police say they violated a city ordinance restricting the feeding. It's like feeding the ducks. Don't feed the ducks. Can't feed the ducks here. Members of Orlando Food Not Bombs were arrested Wednesday when police said they violated a city ordinance by feeding the homeless people in Lake Eola Park. Jessica Cross, 24, Benjamin, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about all their names. It was 3 people. Were arrested at about 6:10 p.m. on a charge of violating the city ordinance restricting group feedings in public parks. Group feedings in public parks. It just seems so weird. The group has been, Food Not Bombs has been around since the 1980s. The city ordinance requires groups to obtain a permit and limits each group to 2 permits per year for each park within a 2-mile radius of City Hall. Apparently, homeless people only get hungry twice a year. It's not every night that they need to feed. They're not like us regular folk who have refrigerators and stoves. Homeless people only must feed in large gatherings twice a year.
So they're like alligators.
I do alligators only feed twice a year.
I think crocodiles supposedly only need to eat every couple of months because of metabolism.
Wolf down an entire hippo or something.
Well, that too. Yeah, they can eat something it'd be like if I could eat a pig.
I don't know.
Hold me over for a while.
I don't know many homeless people. I've talked to some of them, and I've seen everyone I've talked to has always told me they're hungry. Maybe that's because they haven't eaten in the last 6 months, though. So I don't. Not really true. I'm just laughing because it's a sad story, and you got to make light. The arrest papers say that Henry and his other people here helped feed 40 people on Wednesday night.
That son of a bitch.
Oh, yes.
Feeding people.
He's a bad, bad man. And it's not necessarily they were all homeless. Some of them might have had homes and they were just hungry. I mean, how do you tell if someone's homeless? So the ordinance is to feeding the homeless. Do you have to prove the people were homeless? Do you round them all up and have them testify at this guy's trial? Because what if it's just hungry people who have a home, but no food? I don't know.
I don't know.
This is from the police. They basically, I'm sorry, that's not from the police. They basically carted them off to jail for feeding hungry people. Yes, that is true. But the police say they intentionally violated the statute, so they must be punished. But I don't know if it's nice or mean. I don't know if they did it to build a case against these Good Samaritans, or they did it to be nice. I'm not sure. They did allow them to finish feeding the 40 hungry people, allegedly homeless people, before taking them to jail. The penalty for violating the ordinance is 60 days in jail and or a fine of $500. So, I don't know. What happens if you're in jail for 6 months? Can you pay your bills? Maybe we're going to have some more hungry people to feed after this when they get out.
Yeah, when they get out, they might be homeless. Yeah, don't feed the downtrodden. Yep. That's a very bad thing to do. You should just let them eat out of dumpsters like bears.
Yeah.
Or die.
They're lesser people. They don't deserve regular people food. That would be inhumane. That's so a joke, awful. Of course. Until next week, it's been Toby here with you.
In there.
FreeMindsTV.com in the meantime. Have a good week.